Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Fillmore Piru Groundwater Sustainability Agency. As we know in the state, water is such a hot commodity with our drought. And so really just great working with all of you. We are going to start it off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't have my flag, but if you have a flag, if you could please stand and right hand over heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Always good to set the tone. And next will be our roll call.
Okay, Chair Long,
Yes.
Director Kimball,
Here.
Director Minigan,
Yes.
Director Pace,
Here.
Director Villaseñor.
Here.
Perfect.
All right. And Director McFadden is absent and recused, or he's got the pass. Anyways, public comments. Are there any public comments? We have a smaller group today, it looks like. No public comments. Okay. Just a reminder, if you do have any comments, just raise your hand. And as we go through the item, then we'll give you a call. Next is our approval of the agenda. Are there any modifications or changes to this agenda?
Chair Long, no proposed changes to the agenda.
Okay, fabulous. So then I have a motion to approve, please.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Director Pace is the first, and a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you. There's our second, Villaseñor. And a roll call, please.
Okay, Chair Long,
Yes.
Director Kimball, Director Kimball,
Aye. Yeah.
Director Minigan,
Aye.
Director Pace,
Aye.
Director Villaseñor.
Aye.
Perfect.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up is our director's report. First off is Fillmore Pumpers Association.
Okay, so I'll do the tag team again with Glenn. The Pumpers Associations had a joint board meeting this past Tuesday, the 13th. And we talked a little bit about reviewing the GSP and commenting and stakeholder meetings. And I think pretty much most of what came out of our meeting is appropriate for that agenda item. So I'll wait until that agenda item. And that's pretty much all I had.
Thank you. And Piru Pumper Association.
Basically just the same as Gordon from Fillmore. We were in the same meeting, same things. So we have some more information as that agenda item comes up. And then we have a couple of items just for future agenda topics. One of those, if I forget to mention, was talking about the well moratorium. There was some clarification that we were looking for, just kind of put it on our minds for in January.
Okay, thank you. Next is our environmental stakeholder.
So I had my re-election paperwork submitted on the 13th of July. Then Friends of the Santa Clara River was doing that disadvantaged community engagement grant under IRWM for the County of Ventura. And those preliminary results are going to come out and be presented at the July 22nd Santa Clara River Steelhead Committee meeting that Laura Mika coordinates through the county. And I think that'll be good to hear what disadvantaged communities, because we did outreach in Fillmore and Piru, what some of that feedback was. And then, because there was a community survey that I've been mentioning at these meetings. Then the Santa Clara River Levy 1 improvement project, further downstream, is seeking comments on its environmental impact report docs, and those closed on July 27. One, Friends of the Santa Clara River has been a partner in some of the stakeholder meetings, and I think just to highlight with this group, the idea there is with the FEMA levy upgrade requirements that there are also opportunities to do multi-benefit projects. And as those come up in our basins in Piru and Fillmore at some point, even with the city of Fillmore's flood control improvement projects and watershed protection district from the county's point of view, that there are opportunities to maybe make some of those projects multi-benefit and partner and collaborate on what some of our projects and water replenishment goals are. There was one component on the Santa Clara River Levy project, which was the Faro Basin, and there was discussion about groundwater infiltration there. At this juncture, that's not being included, but it's just to highlight with the group. And also, mostly probably for Tony Emmerich as our executive director, for staff to keep track of those projects as they come along so that those opportunities are, capitalized on. Then on September 9th, I'll be presenting as an environmental representative along with other environmental reps on the GSAs in Ventura County at the Santa Clara River Steelhead Coalition. That group has asked us to present on, how these processes are going. Mount Basin had a meeting today on their draft GSPs. They're a little bit ahead of us on schedule wise, but at least the September 9th meeting affords me an opportunity to reach out to the environmental stakeholders and specifically those with steelhead interests about how they can comment and provide feedback on the draft GSP that is slated to be circulated at the end of July. And I reached out to Tony Emmerich and confirmed, we planning on a 60-day comment period. So that timing works out quite nicely. Then I also circulated the Community Environmental Council's Ag Resilience paper for Ventura County. And that again calls out water and energy infrastructure as a very real need from their research. And so that was just, I shared that with the board for your consideration as we discuss project selection within our draft GSP. And then I just wanted to add, and this might be an interpretation of how I read the minutes, and we can discuss that under the consent calendar. But I just want to note, because for future agenda items, I was under the impression we were going to be doing some project selection discussion before the draft GSP was circulated for board input. And that hasn't been agendized at this meeting. So I was just wondering if we're having a special board meeting or how that's going to be addressed. And I think that's all for now.
Okay, thank you. And City of Fillmore?
Hey, thank you. Not too much on our City of Fillmore updates. Let's see, one of the things that we have happening in town is our the Mountain View apartments, which are on Highway 126 and Mountain View. It's 77 units of affordable housing. And so that has opened up for applications, and there's many residents in Fillmore who are taking advantage of that. So I'm happy to hear that. Our Fillmore Equestrian Center is going to be doing, which is right there at the Santa Clara River, and Highway 23 is going to be undergoing like a 4-year long-term scaled grading project and bringing in a lot of dirt. There's a lot of fill that needs to happen. It's on the Fillmore burn dump site, the former dump site. So that's going to be sort of a long-term construction job. It's going to be starting in the city. And also there's been some concern of the concessionaire there who brought in a lot of dirt, thinking that the grading was going to happen sort of more under their watch. But some of it, I believe, has gone over into the riverbed. So FYI, we're seeking guidance from Ventura County Environmental Health. And so none of that dirt is being touched, but that might be an issue that happens in the Santa Clara River at some point. So I will keep you all updated as that moves forward. But that's just one thing I wanted to mention. And I wanted to thank Tony Emmerich and Dan Detmer for the tour of the Piru and Fillmore basins a couple of weeks ago. That was a long time coming from being a new director of more than about 6 months ago, but I really appreciate taking the time to show me visually the two basins and the issues that are happening. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And with Ed not here, I don't believe there's an update from United. And for the County of Ventura, just wanted to let you know, we are looking at getting Ventura County on the emergency declaration for the drought, which I think would be great, especially so that we could move water. If there's any way to get it easier for us to move water to our county, I'm all for it. So I just wanted to make sure we were denied just for the last emergency declaration, but we're asking again. I think there's about 8 counties that are not in it. So we are trying to get it in. So that's a good information. Also wanted to let you know that the broadband bill for the state passed the $6 billion, which is really important for our businesses, our ag, for water, for all of the different functions that if we need to be more drought tolerant, if we need the, the broadband information there. So I just want to let you know that. And I think that's all I'll have to report from the county's perspective. Thank you. Next up is our executive director's update.
Good evening, Chair Long and Board of Directors. I have a couple items regarding the planning grant with DWR. Staff is working on preparing the progress report 9 and invoice 9. That's due August 15th. We are continuing to research and coordinate regarding potential grant agreement amendment. There is a willingness of DWR to extend the grant agreement's term, which I wasn't certain they would be open to, but I'm not quite sure how long that would be. So still working with our grant manager on that and a potential budget line item adjustment. Regarding the groundwater model, I think we shared before that documentation on the expanded model to the river basins and the future runs that United staff did for this agency. Both of the documentation on both of those is completed, and staff is working on the documentation for the validation, which was the extra 3 years that adds validation to the process. So that draft was completed, and the expert panel is going to be reviewing some of those documents over the next couple of weeks, and then probably early August we will get a report back from the expert panel. We had a district staff as well as Daniel B. Stevens, Stillwater, met with California Department of Fish and Wildlife, TNC, and UCSB regarding the conceptual project that you had authorized us to explore with enhancement of the Cienega Springs restoration project, as well as follow-up discussion on the monitoring well. So I think we ended this second meeting with pretty good agreement on the general locations for 3 monitoring wells. In the prior meeting, we had agreement from the fish hatchery manager, and then this meeting we were able to get the restoration project manager on the call, as well as some of his team members and management. And I think we have the monitoring wells nailed down. More discussion regarding the potential project that would perhaps enhance the water to that area. Those that seem like they're boots on the ground folks that are working on the project seem to be pretty supportive of this. CDFW's folks still have some more questions, so they're going to talk about that a little bit more, and we'll have a follow-up meeting with them. So, so good discussion, and hopefully we're making some progress on both of those. And I think that's all I have this evening.
Okay, thank you. And then next up we have, is our legal counsel. Any update?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things from the last meeting. Worked with Tony reviewing the resolution that's before you tonight, as well as reviewed the proposed amendment to the Daniel B. Stevens agreement that's also before you tonight. And just one other legal note, I want to report that last month, Governor Newsom issued another executive order concerning telephonic meetings, and effective October 1, we'll be back to the regular Brown Act requirements. And I just want to remind the board that that doesn't prevent telephonic meetings, but it does impose the restrictions, or the requirements rather, that the Brown Act has for those meetings. Again, everything has to be by roll call. But I think more significantly that a couple of restrictions or requirements are that if there is going to be a telephonic meeting, a quorum of the board has to be within the board's service area. The teleconference locations have, even the remote locations, have to be posted on the agendas. And the location, the remote location, for example, if one of the directors is in a hotel room, that would have to be posted as a location and would have to be open and available to the public. So it looks like October 1 will be back to those requirements, and the regular Brown Act will prevail once again. So just want to let the board know. And of course, I'll be working with Tony on that if any telephonic requests for telephonic meetings come up after October 1st. And that concludes my legal report.
Okay, thank you. And GSP consultant update.
Evening,
Tony.
Chair and Directors. Let's go ahead and talk about the schedule for GSP development. I think that's the thing that's on everybody's mind. And so staff have been in the boat, rowing hard, working on compiling the GSPs for the public review draft element of it. What we're seeing is it's likely that we're going to need to push the PIRU public review draft out a bit in time to allow us some breathing room to make sure we get the Fillmore document done by the end of the month. So what you see in front of you here is an updated Gantt chart. And I apologize for this not getting out to you earlier, but this has all been a whirlwind work in motion here, trying to get this assembled. So what we're talking about is holding the Fillmore GSP due at the end of the month. Then we start the public review period here. PIRU coming out the 20th of August with a staggered review period associated with that. Then moving the stakeholder meeting and assuming that we're going to have a single meeting for both basins like we've been talking about before, we're going to push that out a little bit on Fillmore to the 9th of September or some date approximating that. And same thing with the PIRU stakeholder meeting. So both of those are set for the same date. So basically, we're just sliding out the PIRU timeline and adjusting when the stakeholder meeting would occur. That pushes it a little bit longer than we had originally, we talked about having the stakeholder meeting about halfway through the public review process. This pushes it out just a little bit longer for Fillmore, and it's a little bit shorter for the Piru Basin. So there'll be a lot of similarities between the documents. They're not obviously going to be identical, but there'll be a lot of similarities between them. So I think folks can, if they're interested and wish to, they can see a lot of the flavor of the GSPs by looking at the Fillmore document that will carry over into the Piru. Obviously, some of the details will change, but the general flavor and approach that's taken in the documents will carry over to the Piru document as well. What that does is we've taken up the slack in the schedule, and we've got a compressed timeline here for updating the public review draft after receiving comments. So you can see that this bar overlaps significantly with the public review. We expect those comments to come in. We have an idea of what some of those comments are going to be about. And based on previous versions of the comments from some of the regulatory agencies. So we've got an idea of how we can begin to respond to those and get a jump start to the extent possible on the public review draft response and updating the document in response to the public's comments. So the goal is to get the document in the draft final form to the board at the November meeting. Okay, and so there you would have a redlined version. So you don't have to necessarily look at the whole document again if you don't want to, but you'll have a redline version to show you where the changes were made. And we can give you a clean version of that as well, just to make it easier on the eyes. I know they're complicated to look at sometimes, confusing to look at. Then in December, we come back with the board to actually consider adopting the GSPs in December. And then that gives us a little over a month to get the documents in the form that are necessary to submit to DWR by the end of January. So that's kind of where our schedule looks at right now. And I just wanted to get this in front of you so you understand. There's a bit of a slippage on the Piru, but we're working hard to make sure we can get the Fillmore document out to you at the end of the month.
Thank you. Okay. So that's it for our information items on everybody. And next would be the consent calendar. We have our minutes and warrants and financial report and labor rates. So are there any questions on any of the consent items? If not,
I
Go
had
ahead,
some edits, sorry, on the minutes.
mhm.
It was June 10th, 2021, on page 3. It refers to a fund for GDEs, and it should be a mitigation fund for GDEs. And then on page 5, there was a comment that Tony Emmert would meet with each. I think that it was written that Supervisor Long, that you asked whether or not Tony would meet with EJ Ramson to discuss the costs of Arundel removal.
Yes,
The way I recollected it was that Tony was going to meet with EJ Ramson, or did I misunderstand that discussion?
I think it was, I asked him to. I didn't mandate it. I just asked. It was a request.
Okay. So Tony, did that happen? Just a query.
Director Menigan, we met with, we have had a couple of conversations with EJ, and he's been part of the discussions we've had with the greater Cienega Springs TNC restoration discussions. So I did not discuss with him further the cost of invasive vegetation removal.
Okay, so that's still going to be tabled, that discussion then?
It's the pleasure of the board. I can talk to him further on that, but my apologies on that. But I think at subsequent time, we discussed vegetation removal with the board, and I thought I had heard that the board was not interested in pursuing that at this point, but I can follow up with him on those costs, and or with Adam Lambert or somebody who's been, tracking the costs of that effort in that area.
Yeah, just the way the minutes read to me, there was interest from Director Pace and Villaseñor about us gauging what that cost would be.
Yeah, I'll add that I would like some more information if we are able to bring some back.
Which
The
kind
board
of
to find that out.
leads to my next comment on the June 17th minutes on page 4. There was a comment that the draft, that Tony Morgan said the draft GSP will go out, and then there'll be discussion about project selection. The way I recollect that discussion was that we were going to have a discussion as a board about project selection for the draft GSP. And before it went out for a draft, and that's not on today's agenda. So I'm just wondering, are we having a special meeting? How are we capturing board discussion on project selection in the draft GSP?
Chair Long and Director Mendigan, I apologize if we caught that wrong, but I believe that we had a discussion about projects at the last time we had a board vote on the SMCs and the discussion of projects. And so I felt, and DBSNA team felt, that we had been given direction to pursue the potential water supply project with the Cienega restoration project, but that we hadn't been given direction on any other project efforts. And I apologize if we misunderstood that, but I thought that was what the board had directed us to do.
Because I had specifically said, we had discussed at previous junctures Arunda removal and purchasing of state water project as a project, and I believe Chair Long agreed that purchasing water should be a project for discussion, and I was under the impression we've been tabling the discussion around potential projects, and just off the top of my head, one of those would be to incentivize water conservation, or farmers using less water for whatever reason. And we haven't really had an opportunity to discuss those options, those project options as a group. I mean, I know Tony Morgan has presented on some of these options, but we haven't, as a board, actually had that discussion.
Actually,
on bringing forward additional projects, it's always been like, we'll discuss it later.
well, let me just, from what I recall, because we're talking just the meeting notes right now.
Yeah.
What it was is there was an approval on the GSA, SMCs. There were some items that were brought up from EJ, and I just asked Tony to follow up with him on the information and so forth. There was not a motion to bring back projects to our meeting. So if we would
That
like
was,
to,
yeah, and I agree with you. That was
finish. So if we would like to do that in a future discussion, we can add that on to a future discussion. And then also just in regards to projects, we as a board have gone through projects to highlight things that we can do. We have not cemented what the actual ones are. And I think that my understanding is that after we get this GSPs written, then we can start focusing more on that. But that's my understanding. So thank you. Go ahead.
So I'm not disagreeing on the discussion with EJ Ramson and the data. That's the June 10th, page 5 comment. I'm more referring to June 17th minutes on page 4, because I had raised the when are we going to discuss projects and the cementing of projects as a board. Because the way it currently stands, if we don't have this discussion, the GSPs are going to go out to the public without board input on what the consultant is going to put in the GSP. And I feel that the board should know what those projects are going to be cemented as before it goes out to the public for comment. And that's why I'm saying, like, we haven't had the cementing of what those projects are that are going to go out for public comment. I understand Supervisor Long, you saying, well, we can also develop projects, but once the GSPs are developed, but we are meant to also identify what projects are going to help us reach sustainability within 5 years or 20-year time frame. And those do need to be included in the GSP at this juncture.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, I know Tony's going to answer, but go ahead, Tony.
Well, if it's helpful, I can tell you what the GSP contains right now for projects. And I assume legal counsel can weigh in. We're in the middle of the consent calendar, so is that okay for me to continue this discussion?
Yeah, technically we are trying to approve minutes, and there's an issue with, I think Director Menigan sees an issue with the wording in the minutes. So in an attempt to clarify that, I think you can go forward.
Okay, thank you. So here are the projects that are currently envisioned to be included in the GSP for Fillmore. So it's supporting the Cienega Restoration Project as a drought refuge. That's the delivery of supplemental water to them that we've been discussing before. Second part of that is the construction of shallow monitoring wells at the Cienega Restoration Project site. Project number 3 is the construction of shallow monitoring wells elsewhere in the Fillmore Basin that we've talked about. Number 4 is the purchase of supplemental waters. Number 5 is additional water quality sampling that we've identified in the monitoring plan and data gaps analysis. There's a number 6 that could be a Rundo removal. And there's a number 7 that's subsidence infrastructure vulnerability evaluation that came about via the Pumpers Association's comments on subsidence. So those are the projects currently envisioned to be in there. The tone with which they are offered in the GSP is that the language is the GSA will consider doing blah, 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 whatever the particular item is. It doesn't bind you in and say that you absolutely positively are going to do that. It says you will consider developing whatever that project entails. Now, those for which we have money, for example, construction of the shallow monitoring wells, putting the monitoring wells in at the Cienega project, that has a little stronger language. It'd say the agency is committed to doing those actions. But the other things about purchasing supplemental waters, it says you will consider establishing a discretionary fund that could be used in the future for purchasing supplemental waters if and when they become available. It's that kind of language. Same thing with the additional water quality sampling. The Arundo removal was going to be the same thing. You will consider developing that. It doesn't bind you into it. And as well as the subsidence infrastructure vulnerability evaluation. So those are the projects that we thought we had guidance from the board to include in the GSP.
And Supervisor Long, if I could, Director Menigan, does that response clarify your understanding of the language stated in the minutes as they're presented tonight? Because understand that what we are doing is approving the language that's in
minutes,
these
yeah.
minutes, right?
Right.
Which are intended to only reflect or intended to ultimately reflect the action taken by the agency.
The way I thought that discussion went was that we would be coming back and having a project selection discussion. And the way it is written is saying that the project selection would be coming out with the draft GSP. So I suppose I'm asking the other directors how they recall that discussion going, because I was under the impression that we were going to have a project selection discussion at a board meeting.
Any directors want to answer?
Okay, I'll go. Director Minigan, I was under the impression, basically outlining what Tony Morgan had in his in that outline of what when he was speaking about what's in the draft GSP right now, that sounded well what we had discussed the last meeting. That's what I.
I agreed. My understanding was what he referenced was what we were going to be considering when we are submitting our GSP, and that we weren't putting in the GSP that we are concrete in any single way, because we do need to understand the projects and also the cost associated, and then grants and so forth. So yeah.
Okay, well, I suppose if then there is more of a understanding that that's how it went from the other other directors, then I'm not going to request a change.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments on the consent item? We would have the one modification amendment on the June 10th from what Candace had suggested.
Yeah, Madam Chair, as I see it, it's on June 10th. It's the top of the page of page 3. The language, I believe the proposed amendment is, quote, Director Menigan requested an indication from the board regarding her request to have a mitigation fund for GDEs. So
Yeah.
close quote. So the word mitigation would be added to that sentence.
Yes.
Correct.
So with that, a motion to approve the consent calendar with the amended change. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. And second?
Second that. I'll
And
second that.
seconds that. Thank you. First and second, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Okay. Chair Long,
Yes.
Director Kimball,
Aye.
Director Minigan,
Aye.
Director Pace,
Aye.
Director Villaseñor.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item is our amendment to agree to the agreement with Daniel B. Stevens and Associates for the groundwater sustainable planning and stakeholder outreach activities. Tony Morgan or Tony Emmerich.
Chair Lund, I'll kick this off, and if there are any questions, I'll ask Tony Morgan to weigh in. What we have before you is for consideration is a second amendment to our original agreement with Daniel B. Stevens. Our first amendment, if you recall, was a little short of $20,000, and that was for technical assistance in preparing some of the documents associated with our monitoring wells project, and they've essentially accomplished that and been paid for it. Amendment number 2 that's proposed before you is a little short of $279,000, and that is intended to cover some out-of-scope work, mostly in early public outreach, stakeholder prep work that was done by Dana B. Stevens and Lisa Boline and her team, as well as prep for and participation in the many meetings that we had recently to work through our sustainable management criteria. And then we have, by investing more time up front, hopefully we have clarified many of the controversial issues, but we're now having to ask the Daniel B. Stevens team to work day and night to get these drafts to us by the end of the month. So there's an extra cost and bringing some extra staff members in to try to get this done in an expedited manner. So that's the gist of the request. Daniel B. Stevens is essentially not, with this amendment before you, has not really completely been compensated for the cost. They're choosing to absorb some of this, and you know, I believe Tony Morgan has put in quite a bit of extra time to try to get this done right without charging this agency. But staff has reviewed this, and we feel that the amendment before you for $278,996 is a fair amendment, and that would bring the total value of the project to a little under 1.1 million. And as I believe we've talked before, there's a high, this is covered by the current budget of the agency, and we are working with our grant manager with DWR to see if we can shift some line items in the planning grant budget that we could perhaps cover a little bit more of this planning work for the agency and be reimbursed by DWR. So that's, I think, the summary. Directors, do you have any questions regarding this proposal?
Any questions, directors? And hearing none, if there aren't any questions, a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Director Pace, motion and a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Director Villaseñor is a second. And if there's no further questions, roll call, please.
Chair Long,
Yes.
Director Kimball,
Aye.
Director Minigan, Director
Aye.
Pace, okay. Director
Aye.
Pace,
Aye.
Director Villaseñor.
Aye.
Perfect.
Okay, motion approved unanimously. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, and appreciate all the hard work also that's going into this. Next is a resolution for the 2021-05 establishing standardized management of the Fillmore and Piru Basin.
Chair Long and board, although we have, I think from the beginning, intended to do our best to manage these basins, to plan for and manage these basins in a consistent manner, we didn't really ever take any kind of an action by the board that really puts that out there. And in receiving questions from our consultant, staff is recommending the adoption of this resolution 2021-05 that would explicitly state that where possible, we're going to do our best to manage these basins in a consistent manner. There may be some exceptions that are for good reason, but for the reasons that are stated in the staff report, that they're pumpers and environmental stakeholders, et cetera, that are active in both of the basins. And they have many shared characteristics, it makes sense to where possible, not have multiple different conflicting rules that are concerned with these. So staff recommends that the board consider adoption of this resolution.
Join those. So I will move adoption as a common sense action.
Absolutely, I'm with you.
Just, Kelly, I think you were still on mute. Just a question or a comment before we vote on that, just to make sure.
Yeah.
So the way I understand it, it sounds what we've intended the whole time. It sounded like this is not binding us, that when there's appropriate to have different standards in localized areas, we know inside one basin we can have subjected, special areas. But from the very beginning, we said there may come a time where one basin has a different characteristic that we need to focus on a different thing and treat them individually. And as long as we haven't lost that, then I think this makes sense to just document what our intent is.
Agreed. And thank you. I was on mute. And with that, a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Director Kimball, and a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Director Villaseñor. With that, if there's any further discussion, roll call, please.
Chair Long,
Yes.
Director Kimball,
Aye.
Director Minigan,
Aye.
Director Pace,
Aye.
Director Villaseñor.
Aye.
Okay.
Great. So that moves unanimously. Next up, thank you, is the Groundwater Sustainable Plan Stakeholder Workshop, number 5.
Good evening. Thank you. I've got a few items to go through on this agenda item. Wanted to talk about the public review process in general. We have some guidelines that we put together that list logistics. We have a comment form. We wanted to pick the date for the workshop. We have a draft agenda and then also a draft flyer. So there's a few items, so I thought I'd take them in that order, if that makes sense. So I want to share my screen and I'm going to put up this public review process and guidelines. It just kind of gives us a good place to start, an overview. Okay, so that should be on your screen. And I wrote this before the schedule kind of bifurcated the two GSPs, so I need to update it to reflect that. But basically, we're just setting forth that each GSP will have a 60-day public review period, and now that we know what they are, I'll specify those, the public review period for each GSP. We're going to make the document available for people to view and or download from the website. And then we're also proposing that we provide hard copies that people could look at. They can't take them, but they can look at them, one in each basin. And we thought the libraries might be good repositories for that. And then once we have the workshop date, we'll list that here. And then some instructions about, filling out a comment. We're just asking people to identify which basin, which section, and then just provide us some clear and constructive comments just so that we can provide some good responses. We've got a comment form, and then since this was written, we've also added a web-based comment form. So I will amend this to list that option as well. And then we just list Eva as a point person for any comments on that. Any questions, I'm sorry, on how to comment and all that. So maybe I should stop here and just see if there are any questions, if everybody feels okay with this overall approach. There's something I left out. Let's see.
Anyone, any modifications needed or suggested?
Elise,
Thank-
when you say web-based comment form, is that just a where you can fill in a comment, or are we envisaging that you can comment in different places throughout the document online?
The former, and I can actually put that on the screen later when we go through the comment form, but it's basically a link that has an online form that you fill in your information and you write your comments in there and, you know, add each one so that you're really submitting it through the website, but it's not something where people interact with the document themselves, you know, if that's what you're
Okay.
asking. And I can put that in. Any other, maybe I can go to the, that comment form if there's no other questions on the first item.
And Lisa, if, especially for board members are going to have paper copies of this document. And I believe everyone responded saying that they would like a paper copy of the plan itself, the plan body, and they were okay with PDF copies of the appendices, which are mostly made up of the technical memoranda. And I was just going to ask the consultant team, would it be helpful for those that are going to be reviewing these, that if you did have a comments that are in a document? So we envisioned that organizations and agencies would provide a written letter form document. So, perhaps the two pumpers associations, perhaps Friends of the River, perhaps other regulatory agencies in the county, maybe the city would provide a letter on agency letterhead. And then we would have folks who maybe have one or two comments and could either use a printable form that they could write on as the most old school method. And then the website based, you could just reference a particular part of the report and type your comment in and submit it. And I don't think we had envisioned comments on an editable document, but just to ask, is that something that would be helpful, or would that complicate the team's review and compilation of these?
Guess I'm,
Did you want to weigh in, Tony?
yeah, I guess I'm not in favor of the online editable document. I think that's going to cause more confusion than anything else. It'd be nice if everybody could use the web-based form, because that allows us to spit that out in Excel or whatever, and then Lisa's going to take on the yeoman's job of consolidating those comments together, and getting all the like comments together so we respond to those once, for example, and doing those things. So the more digital they are, the better off and faster that effort will be, and we'll get to the answering the question part of it quicker if she's got that. Now, having said that, if people don't have access or just aren't comfortable using it, then there is the paper version that they could go to and handwrite in their comments, or even, I think it's a Word document, or maybe a PDF that they could actually type into if they really wanted to. So the online thing, I'm not sure exactly how that would work. I think that's another area
Tony,
of confusion.
the online version, it's not that the document is editable. What they did with the Upper Los Angeles River management plan was you write your comments in the way you would like when on an editable PDF. So the comments, if they are on specific issues, are on the right page already. You don't have to cross-reference from a comment letter where they are in the document. They will just be in the document. So there are some pros and cons, but obviously that is whatever is going to be most conducive and helpful for you as the consultant.
Got it.
Meeting.
Got it. So they had each person had their own editable document that they could put their comments on and submit if they chose to.
Yeah, and I
now
think then it would summarize these were all the comments from that person, but you could go through page by page and make comments.
Right. Okay. Lisa, do you have any thoughts on it?
Personally, I find it's a little harder to go through the whole document and list all those. And sometimes I feel like when people write, I'm not sure if you're talking about like a comment in a PDF, which people might do anyway.
Right.
They might, because they can download the PDF, they might just send, mark a comment in the PDF file. But I personally just find it a little easier if they just say it's on this page, this paragraph, and here's the comment. I know some people might find it easier to highlight the text and put their note, but in some cases they don't give you like a full sentence or explanation, and there's a little more interpretation. But I'm open to whatever gives people, the options that they need to make their comments. So I don't want to keep people from being able to comment in a way that works for them, but I don't want to make it too onerous either. But
I would recommend because of the Sigma requirements for tracking all this and compiling it, I think I recommend either comment letters or submitted forms, either electronically or other. Just because it seems like that's going to be a lot more straightforward to track. I personally like working on editing documents that are on a share site and you can track edits, but that seems to be maybe a little bit better for a smaller group of reviewers. So, if there were 4 of us that were reviewing a draft before it was released to the public, that might be a better way to do it as a kind of administrative draft process. And I don't know how many people are going to be doing this. So I'm just trying to imagine, if we had multiple people submitting, a 100-page PDF with comments interspersed in there and the little sticky notes that Adobe allows you, that might be kind of hard to track and more voluminous. So I thought I would provoke a discussion a little bit more, and maybe I should take that back because I'm not sure how we would track all that. If we had more time, we chose back in the early part of 2021 to spend a little bit more time on talking about the SMC matrix and some of those things, and we cut out the administrative draft of the document. And perhaps if we had more time and we were doing an administrative draft, that might be better to have a smaller number of reviewers, commenting in the document. But I think for having to track the comments, I think actually having separate submittals is probably better. Don't you, Lisa?
I do. Selfishly speaking, it's easier on our end, and we may also want to list all the comments. And then, as you're saying, if we include all the comments, we're having multiple copies of this long document as kind of the comment letters in a sense. So it's a little more cumbersome that way. So
as a
I agree
director,
with your recommendation.
if I could comment, when I think about reading all the comments as a director before we move approval, I would like to have them individually and not have to okay, for sure Lisa could pull them out of the document and then recreate the individual comment, but what I've seen, sometimes those comments they're very contextual, and so you need the context with the comment, and I think it'd be a lot of work. I would prefer that the commenters take the time to give us a clear comment that we can easily review and take into consideration.
I would agree, and I think that we had had a successful comment period with our technical reports. And our stakeholders have done well doing that. I think we should just follow suit with it. So provide the letter of your comment, and then if there's anything that's mailed in, that we would scan it and put it on the website so that those comments would be captured as well. One question I was going to ask is just this form. Is it like a PDF that's on our website that says you can fill it out this way, or you could use your own paper? How would this draft document be there? Because it says GSP document, which document? Are they all labeled different? And then a section number, is that the information we're trying to obtain? Is that how the GSPs are going to be written? I just want to make sure our form is correct if it's going to be utilized.
Yes, and let me put up the form on the screen, and then I can also put up the web link. They're pretty analogous, but why don't I put that up? Let me just grab that form. Okay. So, and this is a draft. This was just a thought, and the idea was that you would get a link to this from the website. You could download this as a PDF or a Word file. So for example, if you wanted to actually use this form and type into it, you can add lines. If you wanted to just print it, you could print it and write your comment in. So basically we're just asking for just basic information, date, name, which basin. We're asking for some contact information just in case we have a question on the comment. We want to see if we can get some clarification. And then groundwater use or interest, just, excuse me, just might be helpful to know what perspective they're coming from, but these are not required. Sorry, I need some water, hold on. Okay. So then for each comment, we're asking which document, which would be Fillmore Pyru, section number, page number, and line number, so we know like exactly which text they're talking about, and then space for their comment. So pretty straightforward. So we've got like spaces for a number of comments. They can, keep adding. They can add lines to it. This was the PDF or Word form that we were envisioning. Definitely open to some ideas. And why don't I put up the web version as well, and then we can talk about how we want to change either or both of those. So this is how the web form looks right now. Again, asking for their name, email address. We're also here, we put whether or not they'd like to be added to the mailing list, the interested parties list. Mm-hmm. Then the groundwater use and interest, organization, same information. This has a pull down here. And thank you to the attorney Emrit and Eva and the Ventura IT people for putting this together real quickly. We weren't going to do this, and then they kind of came up with it, and I think it's really great. So basically what people will do is they'll click add comment, and then for each comment we ask which document, etc., and then they fill in the comment. Then they add that comment, and I'll just kind of, I don't know if we'll see if it works here. Oh, I didn't put anything. Okay, so I won't take time to end it, to edit it. But basically, it can keep adding and adding and adding, and then they'll show up here in this comment section. And then when they're done with all their comments, and they click submit. So that way, each person can submit multiple comments under one form. Mm-hmm. So I'll just scroll back up if anybody wants to take a look at that again.
I think my only suggestion is under water interest is to maybe have that be a drop down and insert environmental, agricultural, municipal, etc. Because some folks might not know what that means. And then is it going to be possible for folks to go back and edit their comments in case like they want to add an additional comment once they've submitted? Like, can they open their submit?
Okay.
I think once it's submitted, and they could start a new comment, of course.
Okay, okay.
They're not limited to just one submittal. If they thought of an additional comment later on that they wanted to make, they could enter
Okay.
their name and information again and submit a second one.
Okay, great.
Super.
Tony,
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to have the drop down.
I'm wondering if, do you want to break down the document to plan and then technical memorandum, or, I mean, is it going to be page numbered from beginning to end, or is it going to be broken?
In the GSP, there will be, well, there'll obviously be section numbers of the GSP, but there'll also be a line number on every page. So, they can say it's section 2.4 and I'm on page 28 and I'm looking at lines 18 through 32.
Okay, and that'll run through the plan, from the plan all the way through all the technical memorandum and.
Right now, we
and
haven't
appendices.
envisioned the technical memorandum as having that. We could go back and add that to the technical memorandum if that makes it easier for people to edit. That's certainly something we could do, and that's a good point. We should, on the GSP document field, should we have technical memoranda listed there that they might be commenting on the SMC or the subsidence or whatever. We should probably add that to the list. That would force them to put all of their comments together. If they're commenting on the subsidence thing, they need to put all those together because that's your header at the top when you fill it out. And then they would have to open a new one. Well, no, I guess they have a new comment. They could change in the comment. That's right. Never mind. Back up. They can change that wherever they want then. Never mind. Operator error.
Cool.
To me, the
Perhaps we
simpler
could
to
say-
use, the better.
Say again, please.
Perhaps we could say section number and or technical memo, or those are going to be appendices. Would those be appendix
Right.
section number or appendix number? We could
So-
make that little edit if that makes that clear.
I would probably put the name in there rather than the number. So if it's the monitoring plan and data gaps, that could be one name. Subsidence could be another. SMC could be another. GDE would be another. So the GSP document would be Fillmore, Pyru, I guess conceivably both, or which meaning they're talking about the plan itself, or they could then have SMC, GDE, and all the other tech memos as options to select as well.
Oh, because right now we don't have a pull down. People just write in the section number.
I think we'd have to give them
There's no drop.
what the options would be, or we got to ask for the pull down to be created if that's even conceivably possible. Well, I think it would be possible.
Okay.
The IT guys over there are pretty responsive.
And a question that's being asked is, hasn't the technical memos already been commented on by the public? So this is another round of commenting on those as well because they're a part of the GSP, is that correct?
Correct. And so our intent is to incorporate as many of those existing comments that we already have into those tech memos and then redistribute.
Okay.
With the public review draft.
Okay, any other questions from directors on this?
Maybe just a comment in, if then could the I don't know how you flip back from the pull down menu to say the written form that people could print. On the written form that people print and then fill out by hand, could you just have all the pull down menus listed and they just circle which one it is?
Good point.
So that we get consistent information or guidance about where they're talking.
Good point.
I'm just going to make a comment as well. I think it'd be a great idea if on that process guideline document, Lisa, that you first showed to us, sort of like the instructions for filling out online, perhaps a recommendation that those are folks who are in organizations who are going to be making a lot of comments to recommend that they do this in Word. I think most people will be as they go through the document, just writing up, in a Word document. And then as you go online to the actual form, copy and pasting it. It's frustrating. I know it's happened to me before where you're filling out an online form and, you lose a connection or something, and whatever that big chunk of writing you wrote is lost. So you might want to just put that in.
Thank you. It's a good idea. Anything else? Should we move on to setting the date for the workshop?
Yes, please.
Okay, super. So based on Tony's schedule, we're looking at a time frame around September 9th as a way to kind of capture, not the exact midpoints, but somewhere in the middle of the review of both documents, and not too early or too late for either. So September 9th is a Thursday.
Do we have the 26th of August? Or are you looking the 2nd of? Oh, I can't do that. Like the 26th
The 26th is a little, oh, I'm sorry.
of
Is
August.
it a little too soon?
Yeah,
Because the
that's,
Pyro GSP.
Okay, I was just looking at your form. It said August something, so that's why I was saying.
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I wrote that
On your
before
form.
these two documents got separated. So yeah, you're right. We're now shifting it a little later than we had previously
Okay.
planned.
Well, we have September 16th is our board meeting.
I would personally prefer the 16th because I'm only meeting with the Santa Clara River Steelhead Coalition and other environmental folks on the September 9th. So, to really get that feedback captured in a timely manner, I think 16th would be better.
So maybe this is the time I can give you the feedback that we had from the pumpers discussion. The sort of consensus was that the optimum would be actually to have 2 stakeholder workshops, one in person and one by Zoom. And maybe we could do the September 9th meeting in person. And the suggestion was that we do that one during the day, say at 10 in the morning. And then maybe if we can fit it in with all the other work we have to do on the 16th, we could hold a Zoom workshop at 5, starting at 5, with our board meeting. And that would give we had quite an extensive discussion about this, the difference between an in-person meeting and a Zoom meeting. And there are pluses and minuses to both, but there was a desire to get back or to have this in an in-person meeting, the workshop at least, so that there can be the sort of personal interaction that some people felt is more comfortable than trying to do a Zoom comment or a Zoom question or a Zoom interaction. So that was our feedback, if I've encapsulated it, Glenn.
That is. And our thought was it's going to be some people, if we do it in the daytime, that are likely to be able to be there in the morning session. But then there's others that would exclude them because they're working. And so it just felt like if we had to, not that we're trying to have more meetings, if that would capture a bigger group to allow people to participate, is what the discussion was.
So am I hearing the suggestion of the September 9th at 10 o'clock? And that would probably be at either the Veterans Hall or the City of Fillmore's Council Chamber. And then the 16th, do it as part of our board meeting, have our workshop, and then do our board meeting right after at 5 o'clock. Okay,
Yes, yeah, that would be as I said last meeting, I think this is so important in terms of the stakeholder process, and we have a lot invested as we just approved. And I think this is the chance. I'm sorry, Tony, this is the chance to really give all of our stakeholders a fair chance to participate.
I do like having the in-person. I was just at a conference and the sidebar conversations are so different than us all talking on Zoom right now. And I think that you're right. I think it's very valuable to have some in-depth conversations. And so I think that has a lot of value to it. I would be okay with that. Any other directors? What are your thoughts?
So my only comment is that the Santa Clara River Steelhead Coalition is scheduled to meet from 10 till 12 on September 9th. And that is a key stakeholder. And a lot of the environmental folks are going to be at that meeting. It's a quarterly meeting that they have. And so I'm not opposed to a two meeting, the in-person and the online, but that seems like a considerable conflict with an array of stakeholders.
Did you say you wanted to do, could we do it on the 15th at 10 a.m.?
Of September?
Yes.
That would work. We could do 15th and 16th.
I mean, that's a lot of groundwater discussions in 2 days, but if that worked more for all stakeholders.
I
that
am
could be an
I am
option.
iffy on the 15th
Okay,
on being available then.
I could do the morning on the 15th.
yeah, that would be the 10 o'clock one.
Mhm.
So I am open to the idea of doing a morning session on the 16th and then doing the Zoom session that evening.
Yeah, we could do that.
We could do that too, yeah.
But it means directors then have a whole lot of time tied up in this agency's workshops in one day. So I don't know how that fits with your schedules.
Well, that's also Yom Kippur, just so you know. It is a holiday for some people.
I was just going to mention that. Yeah, and it's a constraint for me.
So you say it's iffy. What about the 13th at 10 o'clock?
Yeah,
Which is
that week is pretty iffy for me the whole week until
Okay.
Thursday. So Monday,
Okay.
Tuesday, and Wednesday are pretty iffy for me of that week. So Thursday, Friday works. If you wanted to do the Friday the 10th, that works of September.
What about the 17th? Of a Friday at 10 o'clock.
Where are we at on
Yeah,
our
the
schedule
17th
then?
works for
That
me.
works.
So we could do a 5 o'clock on the 16th with our board meeting. And then do we do the 10 o'clock on the 17th
In person.
in person?
Yeah, that's fine with me. Our city
Okay, I am seeing 4 heads shaking their heads.
too most likely has the council chambers open on 10 o'clock on a Friday.
Okay. All right, so I'm hearing a consensus.
I can get a fill-in for the 16th.
Okay.
The evening if needed.
Okay.
And if I
Yeah.
could clarify, Director Kimball, you're suggesting these are identical presentations. We're not splitting Fillmore in one and Piru in the other because we're looking to gather people either in the morning or in the evening via Zoom. So we want the same information presented at both.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yes.
Okay.
It would be 2 different
Okay.
accesses or opportunities.
Okay, is there anything else that needs to be discussed in regards to this workshop flyer? Are we mailing it out to everybody?
Well, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. I wanted to go over the agenda, but I just wanted to make sure. So we're going to do at the board meeting on the 16th, a workshop combined with that board meeting. And I just wanted to make sure it's not an issue, but that it's Yom Kippur that day in general for the stakeholders to have a meeting on that day. Just double
Right.
checking.
You said you won't be able to come because of that holiday.
Yeah, but it's, you know, if it's not an issue for the stakeholders, then I can see if somebody can fill in. I just want to make sure it's not an issue in general to hold a meeting on that day, not just about me.
It's not
No.
very considerate, is it?
No.
How about moving our board meeting to the 23rd?
We could do that.
We're getting
Okay.
out there right at the end of the comment period for Fillmore.
Yep.
What
mean-
about the 9th in the evening? Wasn't it the morning that there was a conflict? What if we did the 9th the week before?
I can't do it the 9th. I have another meeting at 6:30 that I chair.
And the 10th was out.
The
10th is
10th,
Friday, it's
Friday
gonna have to
night
be
at
Friday.
5
Oh
o'clock.
yeah, no, sorry. I was thinking the daytime meeting. Oops.
Just call it happy hour and
I was gonna say your wife might not be very happy with you.
What, I know, Tony Morgan, you said the 23rd was getting too far out. What about Monday, the 20th, or Tuesday, the 21st? Is a couple of days extra helpful, or should we try to do it before the 17th?
I would rather give people the option of they have a few weeks to look at the document, and then we sort of midpoint-ish in the review period, we have a chance for them to voice those questions and concerns at a workshop, and we can address those that we can address then. And then they still have, you know, a couple of weeks after that to finish their comment forms that they want to submit and that kind of thing. So if we push them to where they've only got 2 or 3 days to finish their comment forms, I think that's cutting it a little close.
But did we go over the 13th and 14th as options?
Tony's not in.
Oh, that's right.
Did
The
we
other,
meet the 8th?
the other suggestion would be to have the meeting on the 9th in the afternoon.
Like from 1 till
Was
3?
that the,
And like the Zoom meeting in the afternoon.
No, that was the in-person meeting. Oh, no, sorry. I'm not being helpful at all here.
I think your 23rd is your option. Looking at the schedule and so forth.
And it is the second opportunity too, so.
Yeah.
Tony, being that the Fillmore document is out a little bit earlier and the Pyru document's a little bit later,
Mm-hmm.
could we slightly extend the comment period for the Fillmore one? If the only time the board could accommodate would be the 23rd, then could we, let's see, what was our end date of comment period for Fillmore? It was
the 28th?
28th.
28th.
I mean, if we wanted, we could push out the Fillmore and align it directly with the Pyru comment period. That doesn't get us away from our problem of picking a date around the 10th.
No.
But it shoves it out so that the comment period doesn't end till into October.
Yeah, that's
Does that give
pushing
enough
it pretty
time?
tight, but it is important to have these workshops. So I guess that's just a possible, and other alternative would be to move the comment periods around to allow at least a week after we have these workshops, so people could go back and have a few days to put to write their comments up if they're not answered.
Well, I can tell you that if you wanted to push out the comment period a week, for example, start the comment period a week later on Fillmore, and that gave us a week additional to get the Fillmore document done, you certainly would not hurt my feelings at all with that decision.
So then the end date would be October 7th or October 1st.
Yeah, so you go from
And
the-
we could have our thing on the 23rd at 5 o'clock. Our meeting and workshop.
that still would give them a week or so to,
October 1st, the Friday. Does that work?
Yeah, I like that.
And then we'll cancel the 16th. And that's appropriate too. And then we'll have it on the 17th at 5 o'clock or the 17th at 10 o'clock.
17th at 10 a.m. And you're still going to have your board meeting on the 16th, right?
No,
No board meeting on the 16th.
it
Okay.
gets moved to the 23rd. We do the workshop and the board meeting.
I think that's good.
And it's 5 p.m. on the 23rd.
And
Yes.
remember, like you can attend either. It's the same subject matter. So if you need more time, you can attend the earlier one.
Yes.
You can even attend both.
Ooh, option.
You
I
lucky.
think some of us will.
I know we all will. Okay, so we have the information, we have the dates, we have the agenda, we have us all, people are gonna be there. What else? We just need to make sure those GSPs come out
Mm-hmm.
and we're good. So the question is, how are we getting this information out? I think another mailing would be good. What do you want to do, Lisa?
Yeah, we had suggested that. I just want to go back. So on the 17th at 10 a.m., is there a preference for the two locations you suggested? Or do you want us to just see which is available, or if they're both available? So
I would
one you want to
say
go with?
City of Fillmore if it's available, because I don't think they charge us.
Sure, I'll,
We know somebody on the city council.
right. I'll put it in my calendar to get in contact with Erica Herrera for scheduling that. And I'll confirm it back with you, Tony, or
That'd be great.
sure.
One quick question, if I could, for the board meeting that's moved to the 23rd, do you anticipate many other items? Just if we tell people to come at 5, I just want to get a sense of what time that workshop would start.
I
Or
think,
would the whole board meeting just be basically a workshop?
I'd say that let's start with a workshop and then follow with the board meeting. That's the only fair thing.
yes, I would agree.
Okay, so 5 p.m. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you. I have the agenda to put up real quickly to get your input on that. Put this up, get to the top. This is what, it's kind of a draft idea that we thought might work well. Basically, introductions, go over, the purpose of the meeting, where we are in the process. And then we have a presentation of the draft GSP, and this is meant to be an overview. It's really meant for the lay audience. We would review kind of the documents, like content, its structure, very brief discussion of basin setting, SMCs, and just kind of the conclusions, the bottom line, implications for the beneficial users. We don't want to get into a lot of detail here. And then we'd have a question and answer. So this session is really just people have questions about the document itself. And we're going to encourage people to submit their written comments via the website or the form, etc. But then we do feel like we need to have some time at the meeting for comments on the draft. if people really just want to give those comments, verbally at the meeting. And then what we thought we'd do is have a separate technical session so that this is an opportunity for people who really want to get into the weeds and the technical information. We wouldn't do a whole presentation, but we'd have the slides available. So people that want to stay and kind of ask more detailed questions could do it at this time period. And that was really it. Pretty simple. If there's any thoughts on that.
And Lisa, we are suggesting to do both an email blast when the documents are available and also a mailing, right, Eva?
Correct.
Yeah, so as long as you're supportive of that, that's not very expensive, and it does seem to be an added bonus. I'm not sure if putting a ad in the Fillmore Gazette is very helpful, but we have seemed to get good response from an email, a notice on the front page of our website, and the physical mailing.
Agreed. And if we could make sure the flyer has both dates on it so that they can attend all or one.
Yeah, I can quickly put up that draft flyer, but obviously would change it if you want. This is just what we
Tony-
were anticipating.
Tony Morgan, are you envisaging that Stillwater Sciences will be there for technical questions?
At least for the Zoom meeting, we don't have any in-person budgeted time for them right at the moment. We'll have to look at the budget and rework that around if we want them there in person.
Can we have them on a computer at City of Fillmore in case there's any questions? I'm all for hybrid, so.
I mean, I think that's a workable alternative. We have to figure out how we do that in the City of Fillmore's chambers, and maybe Director Villasenor can help us with that. We've had some struggles, IT struggles, let's put it that way, in the past in using the system there and getting it to work in a way that was efficient. I mean, we made it work, but we always used a roll of duct tape and a little bit of baling wire and got it done.
Sure. I'll make sure in our email out about this that I'm CCing the IT person and seeing if that can be plausible. For our last city council meeting that we just had last week, it was our last hybrid meeting where we did have public commenters via Zoom along with the live audience inside the council chamber. So
Oh, that would be nice if we could figure out how to do something like that, and then we could have Stillwater be available on Zoom and could
Okay.
participate that way if necessary. So
I think that would be good. And I'm glad, Candace, thank you for asking about that.
I just want to be clear, though, this would just be for Stillwater to participate. We're not talking about inviting stakeholders to also attend the in-person meeting remotely, correct?
Right.
Okay. So, yeah, so that was the flyer, and I'll amend it as we just discussed. And that was really it.
Does anyone have any other questions, comments? Public have any other questions, comments on this?
I do. In terms, Tony, like the basic plan without appendices, how many pages is that? So I'm wondering is if there's any point or if it would be appropriate to have printed copies for the in-person meeting. And just before I suggest it, what that would amount to.
let me ask a question of Patrick. Patrick, do you know where we are on the page count? I don't remember. Approximately. You're muted. You're muted, Patrick.
I'm sorry about that. The GSP is like definitely about between 100 and 200 pages, but then appendices, I mean, including hydrographs, I mean,
Yes.
several hundred pages.
Right. No, I
Oh,
was just,
easily, yeah.
right. So just the plan itself could be, if it was double-sided, it could be as much as 100 pages. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's, all right. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.
You could borrow the one that's at the library for that day.
Do we need to offer printed copies if somebody requests it? Lisa?
I don't know that there's a requirement. I mean, if somebody really makes a case that they can't access the printed copies available at the library or the electronic, they really make an access argument, perhaps you
Yeah,
would want to
there's-
try to accommodate them, but yeah, thanks, Steve.
Now, if we got a formal Public Records Act request,
Mhm.
pursuant to the California Public Records Act, we'd have to respond.
Mhm.
But in terms of offering it unsolicited, I don't think that's required.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments in regards to this item? Okay, so then the motion approve this workshop and as amended with our the meetings and time.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. In a second, please.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been first and second. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call.
Okay. Chair Long,
Yes.
Director Kimball,
Aye.
Director Minigan,
Aye.
Director Pace. I think.
Sorry, aye.
Okay. Director Villaseñor.
Aye.
Perfect.
Okay, and that motion passes unanimously. Sorry, I keep going in and out my camera, but my computer keeps kicking it off. Okay, moving on to the future topics of board discussion. I heard one today. Glenn, if you'd like to do your suggestion of one of the board items you mentioned.
So I just had a couple of items that I've noted here from our meeting with our stakeholders and then following up in discussions from earlier tonight. One of those was just a question about, and I'm not sure if this goes to you, Kelly, for a question about the well moratorium was brought up about the county's moratorium. When does that go away? Is it upon submission, or how does that, that's just a question that there was a desire to be answered if we could get that in the future.
So maybe agendize an update status on well moratorium, and then we can invite Glenn Shepherd from county to speak on regards to that or something of that nature.
That would be good. And then and Gordon can correct me on this one. There was a question that was come up from our stakeholders that might go to our legal counsel about the discussion of one of the potential projects is providing water for the certain habitat stuff that was that's in there as one of the projects. The question had just come up: can we legally provide water to a private property? Are there any issues? Last time we talked about whether we could do a rundo removal, and we thought that was okay. But in this one, the question is, can we provide water to a private landowner or something? Is that going to be an issue for us?
Yeah, I'll take a look at it. And generally, anytime a public agency provides something to another, you must receive some type of consideration in response for that, to avoid the gift of public funds issue. So I'll work with Tony and look at this to see what could be consideration in exchange for the provision of that water.
And then just the last thing I think was just following up from Candace's comments earlier is there going to be any future discussions on project selections, or when will that get agendized for another meeting?
Chair Long and the board, regarding the projects, I hate to be kind of the party pooper on that, but I think we're essentially out of time if we're gonna have our consultant finish these drafts. But we certainly can bring that back at your board's pleasure, but I think I'm speaking for Tony Morgan's team also in that I think we've pushed this to the very last minute on any further discussion of projects that we're expecting our consultant to get included in the draft documents. I think it's entirely appropriate to continue talking about these in the future and to develop the ones that you want to. But I think we're really pushing it if we're trying to get any kind of a change in the basic part of those documents.
I think the question though is, when would we start talking about it? If what we agreed on is listed in what Tony Morgan had said earlier today, so okay, that's great. We have done our job to get you prepared for the GSP and to write it. So then when do we as a board start talking about those projects?
My recommendation would be we would start talking about those as soon as possible. So, you know, we get our job done regarding a good quality draft of these two documents out, and that's sort of our job one. But you know, time passes quickly, and we've, you know, if we commit to doing some of these, both the monitoring wells and, you know, partnering with the Cienega, and if you want to look at, you know, non-natives removal or buying water, we certainly should be working on all those things as we can push those forward.
If I could
Okay.
offer, you could start those anytime you wanted to start those conversations. The way the GSP is currently configured is it doesn't give you a timeline necessarily. It just says the board will consider developing this or developing a program to purchase supplemental water, developing a program for non-natives removals and that kind of thing. So it leaves it open for you to debate and decide amongst yourselves how you would like to do that and when you would like to do that, or even if you would like to do that.
Right, and the reason why I ask is because of staff time.
Mhm.
How can we accomplish everything, or is it focused on the GSPs and then we focus on that? That's, I think maybe that's something that our board needs to discuss. Because if we need to do this, the projects right this minute, then it might cost us more.
Well, I think the consultant and part-time staff team would appreciate if we can focus on getting the quality documents done. And, you know, we already are committed to trying to move these monitoring wells forward and getting the best out of our grant. And if we had a little bit more breathing room, I think we would appreciate that. But that's up to you. You know, if you feel strongly about moving something else forward sooner, then we'll do our best on that. But we have a pretty full plate right now.
And I appreciate the truthfulness on that. I agree. But it will be a future date, just the question is when. And so it needs to be after the GSP most likely. Was there any other future discussion topics for discussions?
I'd like to also too, on the well moratorium, I think, as I understand it, it does, once we submit the plan, then these basins are exempted from the moratorium. So the follow-up question is, are these basins going to do what Fox Canyon has done and implement their own moratorium? So in other words, are we going to implement our own moratorium following the exclusion from the county moratorium? So that's what well owners are concerned about. So that should be part of that discussion when it's appropriate.
Okay. Any others? I heard earlier with Candace about the projects. We kind of discussed that just now. Was there any other items in discussion?
I would just say for the project selection, you know, Tony Morgan had outlined what they are. If there are any other projects, it probably would be good to know what people are thinking about sooner than later. Because if there is a project that other directors are considering, like, and we want to include it, because part of our guiding principles is also to be aspirational. And right now, you know, I'm just wondering, with the state of drought, if we are being, you know, building in enough resilience with the current scope of projects. That's just a question.
I think we
Okay.
have a guest speaker who wants to comment.
Okay, thank you for bringing that into our attention. Any others?
The only, it's come up sort of, in October, we have to go back to Brown Act meetings. The question is, do we want to have audience participation by Zoom, or effectively some kind of a version of a hybrid meeting going forward? Is it something we can do, and is it something that the board would like to do? And I see Stephen, and we can do legally.
Yeah, it's, you know, the Brown Act contemplates telephonic meetings where the directors are located remotely. What you're suggesting is where we could have people call in to our meeting. Is that what you're?
Hmm.
Yeah, let me take a look at that. That's
Let's put that on an agenda item for the August or the September meeting.
Or October.
Yeah, because from what I understand, that law is finished the end of September, so we should discuss it. And the 23rd, we could talk about that. Shouldn't take long, just so that we set the audience's expectations. That's how we're doing it.
okay.
That sounds good, because there's a lot of moving and shaking going on still with the pandemic right now.
Yeah, and we've heard a lot of people actually prefer the Zoom participation, or the ability to attend the meetings by Zoom, maybe not comment or participate, but to so I think if that's something we can do without if it's something we can do fairly easily, I think it might be really valuable for future.
Okay.
Yeah, and just FYI, the city of Fillmore is ending our Zoom participation, but continuing to live stream on YouTube channel. So someone can tune into the live meeting, again, not do comment, but can watch it and listen.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other further discussions? Apologize, I'm laughing. My family's giving me funny faces saying dinner's ready. I'm not laughing at you, I promise. All right, any other further discussion? Okay, with that then, that's the last item on our meeting. And so we would be adjourning for our meeting at August 19th via Zoom at 5 o'clock. All right, thank you everyone for all your hard work and dedication. I hope you're getting a couple of days of some enjoyment with this beautiful weather. I'll talk to you later.
Thank
Have
you.
a good one.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Night,
Thank you.
thanks.
Night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Right.